Well, thank you so much, Joyce Nakato, for that report. And that particular story brings us to our discussion tonight. We do have Xavier Njoyi, who is the Country Director Action Aid, to speak to us about that story. Are they the right strides that we should be taking as a country at the moment? Welcome to NTV Weekend Edition tonight.
Thank you, Sandra. First of all, I would like to say that indeed there is a significant stride, especially in the appointment in the middle of this year of the Leadership Code Tribunal. That is a significant step in the functions of the Leadership Code Act and the Inspectorate of Government. As you may be aware, leaders ought to declare assets as required by the law, but also liabilities. And this is important for a number of reasons. First, to be able to fight corruption successfully, it is important that people who have the responsibility in management of public resources, their assets are declared. And declaration means that they are made available, verifiable to the Inspectorate of Government. So it's important that we're able to trace the assets of leaders, but also the liabilities they owe, so that we can determine whether what they have can be traced to the incomes or they have obtained other wealth through other ways.
Right. Well, Mr. Xavier Njoyi, when you look at the new online system for public declaration of assets, it stays online, and ideally it's supposed to fight corruption, but the public doesn't have a say in that. Do you still think that it's the right thing to do? Because ideally the public should be able to see what our public leaders or officials have, and
yes,
if we can hold them accountable.
Yes, actually the law, the Leadership Code Act provides for any member of the public on application to the Inspectorate of Government to be able to access any declaration made by a leader, so that you can within the provisions of the law, determine whether the leader has declared the right wealth and assets and liabilities. However, there are challenges. One of them is that with the law, first of all, the Leadership Code Act, as amended in 2017, removed the requirement for leaders to declare the assets and liabilities of their spouses and children. And that is a big gap. Members of Parliament, despite the insistence of civil society that this was an important section of the law, removed it during amendment. And that means that as a leader, you can decide to disguise your wealth, your assets and liabilities in the names of the children, in the names of the spouse. So in actual sense, what you are declaring in your names may not be significant at all. And that is a loophole that needs to be addressed in the law. But the other challenge that we need to deal with, the Inspectorate of Government needs to deal with, is really the verification. So after declaration, you talked about the 25,000 leaders who have to declare wealth and assets online. After the declaration, can you really trace the declarations to the source, the physical source of the wealth? If I declared a 3-bedroom house, am I able, is the IG able to declare, able to verify the 3-bedroom house in its location? And that is something that remains a challenge to the implementation of the Leadership Code Act. But we also know that in the fight against corruption, there is political will that is needed. I just illustrated one of them in the members of Parliament, removing the requirement for the spouses and children of leaders to also declare wealth. In other jurisdictions, that is actually an important part of the law in the fight against corruption. And so that's something that is still missing in our laws here, and that needs to be leveled so that we're able to elaborately deal with corruption.
So maybe for those that are watching us tonight, is it possible for me as a citizen, you know, if I want to find out what my local chairperson is doing or how much they own, or even my member of parliament, is it possible to log into and actually find out what they own and be able to hold them accountable and say, you know, I know you don't have you have more than one house, you have more than 2 cars, you have more than this and that. Is that possible?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that you can actually apply. The law requires that you apply to the IG, you lodge an application and pay a fee, and then the IG is able to provide that information within 21 days.
Don't you think that is a loophole in its own sense?
It is, I mean, the law is in such that they're trying to prevent also abuse of the process, so that I don't pick the information about a leader and I use it for other purposes rather than to know what they actually declared.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what are you mentioned, I mean, you pointed out the fact that spouses and children are not catered for in this new development, but what are some of the other recommendations that you have for the successful use of the IGG online system of public officers declaring their assets and wealth?
I think that the IG actually needs to work with citizens. Ultimately, the fight against corruption heavily relies on citizens because they have a stake. It's them who, especially for elected leaders, elects them. We're in election season, and so it's important that citizens carefully determine who they elect into office, and they make a requirement that these leaders are able to declare their wealth publicly as required by the law. And so that's a key aspect for the success of the Leadership Code Act to work. The role of citizens, including journalists who are able to file for the declarations and ascertain whether this is really what a leader has declared, matches with what is physically on the ground. So that's something that is key. The other issue is that the fight against corruption, yes, we have institutions of government such as the Inspectorate, but ultimately it is political, and therefore political will becomes necessary. The leaders at the top, from the president to members of parliament, in the judiciary to the LC1, need to set the tone regarding the fight against corruption. So exemplary leadership, for example, for a leader to come up and say, I am so and so, I am running for office, I have 3 goats, I have a house, I have a DMC car. It is important for leaders to set the tone so that other people will believe that these laws will actually work.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Xavier Enjoyi, the Country Director, Action Aid, for joining us in our studios tonight.
Thank you, Sandra.
We do wait and see how it actually works out eventually in the long run.
Thanks.
All right. Now, we do turn to you and we ask you tonight to share with us your views on the IGG's new online system for public leaders to declare their wealth and assets. Do send us your thoughts on our social media platforms. That is NTV Uganda on Facebook and NTV Uganda on Twitter. Once again, we ask you to share with us your views on the IGG's new online system for public leaders to declare their wealth and assets. Once again, send us your thoughts. We're waiting to hear from you. Well, moving on tonight, Bunyoro Chitara Kingdom has rejected the new Hoima District Police Commander, Alex Mwine, who has just been transferred from Mityana District following the incident where police tear-gassed Mbogo clan members attending a commemoration event in Mityana District. Now, the Bunyoro Kingdom officials led by the Prime Minister, Andrew Byakutaga, said the police commander is not fit to serve in their area. The Inspector General of Police transferred Alex Mwine alongside his boss, that is Wamala Regional Police Commander Bob Kagaruga, a few days after the tear gas incident, which has attracted protests from Buganda Kingdom. Well, a section of Buganda members of parliament have also condemned the police for transferring the officers instead of sanctioning them.